I acquired a seaside mansion and allowed others to assume I resided there in solitude without companions. My child asked his partner's relatives to visit in order to flaunt his fresh coastal residence. Upon their entry, I was already on the porch being questioned by a television team regarding the recent purchaser of the estate. The phone from my offspring arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I examined the concluding designs for the indigenous shoreline greenery. "Mother, I require assistance," he stated. That recognizable inflection in his speech, the one he had mastered from early years whenever he desired an item. "A crucial matter has arisen this coming weekend." I grinned inwardly, running my digit over the diagram for the intertidal basin instructional display I was constructing on the grounds. At 58, I had become familiar with my child's crises, which usually entailed dazzling somebody using assets that did not belong to him. "What sort of help, dear?" I inquired, maintaining an even tone. "I was wishing you might delay relocating to the seaside dwelling this weekend only for a couple of days." He hesitated, then continued with rehearsed nonchalance. "I wish to guide a few acquaintances through the region, and it would be ideal if they could remain there." The seaside dwelling, my $6 million waterfront estate in Seaglass Cove, the aspiration I had labored 35 years to realize. The residence I had acquired following the expansion of my property development firm from scratch into a discreet powerhouse. The identical residence that residents merely called the Hayes Estate, presuming I was merely a reserved widow who had somehow secured a lovely spot for her later years. "What acquaintances are these?" I questioned, although I already guessed the response. "Olivia's folks are visiting the area," he confessed. "The Westfields. I have mentioned them to you. They possess Westfield high-end products." "Ah, indeed, the purse manufacturers," I remarked. Victor and Camilla Westfield's enterprise was infamous for its promotional efforts that basically criticized individuals for lacking their items. Their offspring Olivia appeared agreeable the single occasion I encountered her, although she had eyed my practical footwear and unassuming vehicle with scarcely hidden sympathy. "They offer more than purses, Mother. They provide a complete upscale way of life," my son amended with a faint note of annoyance. "And they have keen interest in waterfront real estate ventures. If they appreciate the location." He allowed the suggestion to linger. My son had been seeing Olivia for 8 months, and I identified this as an effort to captivate prospective relatives by feigning that my residence was his accomplishment. "So, you desire them to think the residence belongs to you?" I queried straightforwardly. A period of uneasy quiet ensued before my son chuckled anxiously. "Not precisely. I merely believed it would be pleasant for them to view it and perhaps avoid delving into the entire clarification concerning how your mom, who exists like a typical pensioner much of the time, in fact possesses a several million-dollar waterfront estate," I completed. "It is simply complex to describe to individuals such as the Westfields," my son responded protectively. "They appreciate a specific manner of living, uniformity." What my offspring implied, but would not express outright, was that he felt ashamed of my selections. In spite of my accomplishments, I had nurtured him in a cozy yet humble dwelling. I operated a 3-year-old sedan instead of an extravagant automobile. I dressed in attire for ease rather than brands. To the Westfields, I would represent an oddity, affluent, but lacking the adornments they prized. "There is a pleasant inn in Oak Ridge Bay," my son went on. "I could reserve you a wellness getaway on me." I nearly chuckled at the absurdity of my offspring proposing to sponsor my hotel accommodation so he could act as if my residence was his. Rather, I pondered the communication I had obtained only the day before. An 11th-hour chance that now appeared nearly destined. In truth, I intended to be absent this weekend regardless. I fibbed effortlessly. "You are free to utilize the residence." "Truly?" The alleviation in his speech was evident. "That is ideal. We will only stay Saturday and Sunday. I assure we will restore everything precisely as discovered." "I am confident you will," I answered. "There is merely one minor detail. A repair specialist could visit on Saturday afternoon to inspect the air conditioning unit. Simply allow him entry if that occurs." "No issue," my son consented readily. "Thank you, Mother. This is significant." Following the disconnection, I rested on my balcony facing the Pacific, reflecting on the circumstance. I had dedicated my whole mature existence to establishing my enterprise, Hayes Sustainable Developments, from a solo endeavor into one of the most esteemed environmentally aware real estate firms along the West Coast. I had nurtured my son by myself after his dad passed away when he was merely 7. I had forfeited committed funds, labored 70-hour weeks, all while attempting to embed principles of integrity and diligence in my offspring. Yet at some point, my son had formed the idea that outward impressions were more vital than facts. He had grown progressively obsessed with captivating others using emblems of prosperity instead of real attainments. His mid-level promotional role somehow turned into senior direction in his accounts. His least upscale flat was portrayed as my residence in the elite West Side area. And now, evidently, my seaside dwelling was set to become his newest accessory. I retrieved my telephone and contacted a contact. Melanie Winter's workplace, responded a sharp voice. "This is Eleanor Hayes. I am phoning regarding the discussion inquiry for properties with purpose. I think we had a provisional booking for the following month." "Yes, Ms. Hayes. Permit me to access that document. I am curious if Ms. Winters could be free this Saturday as an alternative. An unforeseen event has arisen, and I believe it could create a more captivating feature." After settling the revised plans, I grinned inwardly. For years, I had permitted my son to sustain his delusions, to pose as somebody he was not. I had wished he would ultimately mature beyond it, discover assurance in his real capabilities instead of invented triumphs. Maybe it was the moment for an alternative method, a mild yet essential dose of reality. I gazed at the sea surges pounding the beach beneath my grounds. Similar to those surges, honesty had a method of ultimately penetrating any obstacle, regardless of how meticulously built. This weekend, the surge would at last arrive. The subsequent 3 days flew by in a rush of preparations as I readied for Saturday's unanticipated intersection of occurrences. Melanie Winters and her filming group were eager about the timing adjustment, especially when I suggested the genuine household interactions that could occur during recording. They did not require the particulars. The prospect of improvised personal exchanges was sufficient to gain their attention. "We will reach at 10 on Saturday morning for setup," Melanie had verified in our subsequent discussion. "The real discussion will commence near 2 in the afternoon. Does that schedule remain suitable for you, Eleanor?" "Ideal," I responded. "My offspring and his visitors ought to show up around 3. We will be deeply engaged in the discussion by that point." "Excellent." "Authentic household responses consistently create captivating footage," she remarked, eagerness clear in her tone. "And you are at ease with us recording whatever transpires organically." I considered my son, about the years observing him fabricate intricate fictions concerning his existence, his successes, his finances, about the growing gap between us, as he pursued endorsement from individuals like the Westfields. "Definitely," I replied. "I believe it is the moment for some genuineness before the lenses." Friday night, I got a message from my son. "Everything prepared for tomorrow. We will get there around 3. Thanks once more for this, Mother. You are wonderful." I answered with a basic thumbs-up symbol. No requirement to expand or suggest what lay ahead for him. Certain teachings were optimally absorbed via direct involvement. Saturday morning broke luminous and crisp, the type of flawless seaside day that property builders and visitor bureaus fantasize about. Sunshine glittered on the blue sea noticeable from each eastward window of my dwelling. The aroma of ocean brine and jasmine floated through the ajar French portals to the primary balcony. Melanie's filming group arrived exactly at 10, operating with the trained proficiency of individuals used to converting personal areas into interim filming locations. They set up illumination, organized chairs on the broad balcony to seize the optimal backdrop of sea and shore, and performed audio checks with little interruption. "This estate is truly breathtaking, Ms. Hayes," remarked the youthful filming aide as she assisted me in positioning the cordless mic unobtrusively within my cotton top. "The blending of the building with the organic terrain is extraordinary." "Appreciate it," I answered. "That was deliberate. I desired the dwelling to appear as if it arises from the shore instead of forcing itself onto it." "Well, it definitely succeeds in that." She beamed. "Melanie plans to emphasize greatly your preservation strategies for the estate, particularly the ocean learning facility you are establishing. It is precisely the sort of intent-oriented possession our audience relates to. By 1:30, styling and cosmetics were finished, altering me from my standard unadorned look to a marginally more refined variant appropriate for filming. I had selected basic yet graceful garments, a light azure cotton blouse, fitted ivory trousers, and flat sandals. No branded items, no prominent accessories, nothing that shouted affluence, just serene sophistication and ease. Precisely as I favored in my everyday routine. Melanie Winters showed up at 15 to 2, her arrival instantly invigorating the area. Face to face, she was tinier than she seemed on screen, but her magnetism was even stronger. "Eleanor, it is delightful to meet you at last," she expressed, gripping my palm cordially. "I have been intrigued by your method of building since I initially learned about Hayes' sustainable developments in that Fortune article last year." "The delight is mine," I answered, although I remain astonished that anybody considers my efforts worthy of screen time. Melanie chuckled, a sincere noise that promptly relaxed me. "You must be joking?" A female who constructed a building empire centered on ecological durability, who resides humbly despite considerable riches, and who is currently developing an ocean learning facility for the neighborhood. "You are precisely the type of prosperity guardian we aim to showcase." As we positioned ourselves on the balcony for the discussion, I experienced a brief surge of remorse about what I was arranging. My son would certainly feel degraded. The Westfields would be totally unprepared. Was this genuinely the optimal approach to handle the matter? But then I recalled my son's latest holiday visit when he had devoted the whole period creating justifications for why I could not participate in his meal with the Westfields. "They are quite selective regarding their social group," he had clarified clumsily. "And your opinions on materialism could create unease." My determination solidified. Occasionally a solitary instance of uneasy honesty was more compassionate than years of supporting illusion. At exactly 2, the recording started. Melanie was an expert questioner, starting with inquiries about my history and the creation of my firm before fluidly moving to my views on riches and accomplishment. "You have attained what numerous would regard as outstanding monetary triumph," she pointed out. "You have opted to exist comparatively humbly until this estate acquisition." "Why so?" "I have never linked riches with items," I clarified. "For me, monetary triumph offers liberty and possibilities, not a command to indulge. This dwelling is my initial major extravagance, and even it fulfills a larger intent than simple possession." We talked about my intentions for the estate, how a portion would transform into an ocean learning facility for nearby institutions, how the areas were being planted solely with local varieties to illustrate shore preservation, how I had collaborated with ecological specialists to guarantee least effect on the fragile habitat. "It is intriguing," Melanie noted, "particularly in the current society of obvious indulgence and position indicators, to encounter somebody who sees riches mainly as an obligation instead of permission for extravagance." "Funds merely magnify who you are already," I responded. "If you prioritize substantial influence over impressions prior to riches, that is improbable to alter following its acquisition." The discussion proceeded organically as we strolled through diverse sections of the estate. We were back on the primary balcony talking about my deceased spouse and solo parenting when I detected the unique noise of wheels on the pebble path. "That must be my offspring," I mentioned to Melanie with a slight grin. He did not anticipate my presence today, and he definitely did not expect a filming group. Melanie lifted an eyebrow, immediately detecting the possibility for engaging footage. "Is that correct?" "Well, impromptu household gatherings always produce genuine instances." We proceeded with the discussion as sounds floated up from the entrance of the dwelling. I heard my son's lively inflection as he apparently delivered his impressive overview to the Westfields. "Wait till you witness the panorama from the primary balcony. On bright days like this, you can observe all the way to the promontories." Then arrived the instance I had awaited for 3 days. My son turned the bend onto the balcony, motioning grandly, accompanied by Olivia and her folks. And this is where I pass most of my mornings, simply absorbing that he halted midway, his face changing from assured escort to astonished incredulity in a flash, his gaze shifting from me to the filming group to Melanie Winters, whom he surely identified from screen. "Mother," he uttered at last. What are you? I believed you were. Greetings, dear, I expressed agreeably, standing from my chair. What impeccable timing. We are just recording a piece about the dwelling for properties with purpose. Come participate and bring your companions. The lenses recorded every second of his mute bewilderment. And behind him, the gradually emerging realization on the countenances of Victor and Camila Westfield that something was severely incorrect with the account they had been given. James, Melanie declared, skilled enough to effortlessly weave this unanticipated event into our discussion. What impeccable timing. Eleanor was just describing her ideas for this exceptional estate. I would adore obtaining your viewpoint too. My son remained immobile, his lips parting and sealing like a stranded fish. Behind him, the Westfields shared puzzled looks while Olivia's gaze flitted between her partner and me, assembling elements instantly. I believed you were absent this weekend, my son eventually stated, his tone unusually elevated. Alteration of intentions, I answered serenely. When Properties with Purpose contacted about showcasing the dwelling, I could not decline the chance. You recall I noted somebody might visit today? The intentional misstatement of my repair specialist alert lingered between us. My son's complexion turned a deep crimson as comprehension emerged that I had been aware and orchestrated this meeting. Properties with Purpose, Camila Westfield echoed gradually, her impeccably preserved exterior displaying the initial signs of perplexity. The program about exceptional property holders. Correct, Melanie affirmed, directing her focus to the fresh arrivals. We present outstanding estates and the innovators behind them. Eleanor's eco-friendly seaside project is precisely the type of thoughtful extravagance we enjoy featuring. Eleanor's project, Victor Westfield uttered flatly, his stare intensifying as it moved to my son. I experienced a brief twinge of compassion for my offspring, but proceeded. James, why not present me to your companions correctly? Ensnared in his own trap, my son had few options but to obey. Mother, this is Olivia Westfield, my partner, and her folks, Victor and Camila Westfield. This is my mom, Eleanor Hayes. Delightful to encounter you all, I expressed, offering my palm. Please participate. The lenses are harmless. Mrs. Hayes, Victor expressed rigidly, taking my grip with apparent hesitation. I fear there appears to be some misunderstanding. James welcomed us here to view his fresh seaside dwelling. Did he? I elevated an eyebrow, gazing straight at my offspring. How fascinating. The camera operator shifted his stance mildly, recording the strain from the ideal perspective. Melanie, always the expert, identified engaging footage when she observed it. James, did I misinterpret? She inquired innocently. I thought this was your mom's estate. The ownership documents we investigated for the program showed Eleanor Hayes as the only proprietor. My son gulped noticeably, cornered by his own invention with several observers and most harmfully lenses documenting his every response. It is intricate, he faltered. Mother and I possess an agreement. What agreement is that? I questioned, truly interested in what justification he would concoct immediately. Olivia advanced. Her branded summer outfit and meticulously arranged locks, indicating she attired for a quite distinct sort of day than the one developing. James informed us he acquired this estate last month, she stated outright. He noted you might reside here sometimes as his visitor. The boldness almost caused me to chuckle. My personal dwelling diminished to a location where I might be allowed to reside sporadically. The offspring I nurtured taking recognition for my lifetime success. I understand, I answered, maintaining my tone steady. That surely would be an agreement if it were accurate. Mother, my son started, but I raised my palm. Allow me to explain for all, I expressed, speaking not only to the Westfields, but also the Lenses. I acquired this estate 6 months ago after disposing of my majority stake in Hayes Sustainable Developments, the firm I established 35 years ago. It symbolizes not merely a residence for me, but the foundation of my upcoming phase, developing an ocean learning facility for local institutions and illustrating eco-friendly seaside existence. Melanie, detecting the ideal transition, intervened, which returns us to what we were addressing before your visitors appeared. Eleanor, you referenced dedicating part of the estate for community learning access. Could you expand on that idea? With trained simplicity, I resumed my discussion, detailing my intentions for the estate, while the Westfields remained uneasily at the boundary of the shot, obviously unsure if to remain or depart. My son had retreated somewhat from the assembly, his face a blend of shame and alarm. What captivates me, Melanie proceeded, is how variably individuals opt to exhibit their triumph. Eleanor, you have referenced favoring effect over outward show. I would be interested. She pivoted fluidly to incorporate the Westfields to listen to additional viewpoints on this. Mr. and Mrs. Westfield, as prosperous entrepreneurs yourselves, how do you perceive the connection between riches and its outward indicators? It was an expert questioner's tactic, integrating the unanticipated visitors into the account while underscoring the ideological difference that lingered unspoken in the atmosphere. Victor Westfield, unprepared but obviously familiar with speaking publicly, advanced. Well, at Westfield Luxury Brands, we think superiority and artistry ought to be apparent, he declared with trained assurance. There is no merit in concealing triumph. Our clients comprehend that exhibiting accomplishment encourages additional accomplishment. How intriguing, Melanie answered, nearly a straightforward opposition to Eleanor's beliefs. Eleanor, you have constructed considerable riches, yet selected not to indicate it by a common extravagant symbols. Why so? I have merely never discovered that possessions determine my value, I responded. Items are instruments or delights, not self-definition. Camilla Westfield emitted a minor, rejecting chuckle. With due regard, this dwelling scarcely implies restraint, Mrs. Hayes. Waterfront estate is maybe the supreme position emblem. The distinction, I replied softly, lies in intent. This dwelling fulfills a role beyond position. Learning, preservation, societal advantage. It is not concerning who possesses the grandest vista or most striking location. The lens swept to record the Westfield's responses, Victor's scarcely hidden disapproval, Camilla's compelled grin, and Olivia's increasing unease. My son stayed at the margin, apparently attempting to vanish. Let us discuss your path to this stage, Melanie proposed, effortlessly advancing the discussion. Numerous of our audience are motivated by accounts of self-created triumph. How did Hayes' sustainable developments commence? As I recounted the tale of launching my firm with naught but a sketching board in my storage after my spouse's passing, I observed the Westfields' faces alter. Despite their inclinations, they appeared engrossed by the sincerity of my account, so dissimilar from the contrived addition their daughter's partner had offered. I never possessed backers or inherited funds, I clarified. Each estate, each initiative was constructed on reinvested profits and personal effort. When builders were raising identical neighborhoods, I was planning eco-friendly communities with least ecological harm. It was not the quickest path to riches, but it was the one that permitted me peaceful rest. Olivia had moved apart from her folks to position near the balcony barrier, gazing at the sea. Her posture indicated internal struggle, maybe reevaluating what she believed she understood about my son, about prosperity, about what genuinely counted. When the lenses halted for a short configuration change, Victor neared me outright, his tone low and restrained. Mrs. Hayes, I do not value being deceived concerning the possession of this estate. Your offspring has generated a very unsuitable circumstance. I concur entirely, I answered calmly, and I regret my son's distortion. But I am interested. Would you have regarded him differently if you had known the facts about his situation? The inquiry lingered between us, uncomfortably straightforward. Victor's face stiffened, but before he could answer, the lenses were operating again, and we all returned to our spots for the subsequent part of what had turned into a very distinct type of discussion than anybody had foreseen. When Melanie requested a 15-minute pause, the mood on the veranda pulsed with strain. The filming crew occupied themselves modifying gear, generating the appearance of seclusion while staying near enough to record any engaging dialogues. Mother, may I converse with you? My son inquired through gritted teeth, signaling toward the French portals leading indoors. Confidentially, I assented, trailing him into the sitting area. Through the panes, I could observe the Westfields clustered in talk at the distant end of the balcony. Camilla motioning vigorously while Victor examined something on his device. Once indoors, my son confronted me. "What on earth are you doing?" he whispered harshly. You intentionally arranged me to appear foolish. Did I? I maintained my tone composed. I merely consented to a discussion about my residence. You are the one who asserted it was yours. You knew precisely what would transpire. You could have alerted me like you alerted me about escorting the Westfields here under misleading claims. I replied about displaying my life's labor as your newest purchase. My son passed a hand through his meticulously groomed locks, messing it in aggravation. You do not comprehend. The Westfields are crucial. Olivia is crucial to me. I required to captivate them with falsehoods, I questioned softly. Is that truly the basis you wish to establish a bond on? It is not that straightforward, he maintained. They esteem specific elements, triumph, attainment, standing, and you believed the sole method to show those was by feigning to possess something you do not. Look who is speaking, he retorted. You have been minimizing your triumph my whole life. Residing in that humble home in the outskirts when you could manage far superior, operating regular vehicles, behaving as if we were merely secure when all the while you were. He motioned broadly at the waterfront mansion surrounding us, able of this. His statements disclosed the core of his bitterness, a viewpoint I had not completely grasped until now. In his view, I had been the one hiding truth, refusing him the standing symbols he desired. I never concealed my triumph from you, dear, I expressed cautiously. I merely chose not to characterize myself by belongings. There is a disparity between humility and deceit. Well, your humility made me appear as a deceiver before my partner's folks, he snapped. What am I expected to inform them now? The facts could be a novel beginning, I proposed. That you are a skilled promotional supervisor developing your profession legitimately. That you do not need to create successes to merit admiration. He chuckled sourly. You truly do not grasp it. In their realm, in Olivia's realm, being advancing is insufficient. You either count or you do not. And if that is genuinely how they assess human value, I inquired tenderly. Are they individuals whose endorsement you ought to pursue? Before he could reply, the French portals opened and Olivia entered, her face inscrutable. Apologies for disturbing, she expressed rigidly. My folks are inquiring if we should depart or proceed with this discussion circumstance. My son appeared alarmed. Olivia, I can clarify. Can you? She cut in, her tone strained. Because I would truly like to comprehend why you informed us you had acquired this dwelling. Why you have been acting as if your mom is merely some ordinary pensioner when she is obviously a prosperous entrepreneur. Why all you have told me about your monetary status seems invented. I headed toward the exit. I will provide you some seclusion to resolve this. No, please remain, Mrs. Hayes, Olivia expressed, astonishing me. Since we are at last being truthful, I would favor all facts revealed. She pivoted back to my son. Well, my son appeared ensnared, his stare shifting between us. I never precisely stated I acquired the dwelling, he commenced feebly. I just did not amend specific presumptions. You explicitly told my dad you finalized the estate last month, Olivia responded. Those were your precise terms when you displayed him images of the panorama. It was hopeful, my son tried. Something I am striving for. Olivia shook her head in disbelief. And your senior role, your investment collection, the holiday residence in Aspen you referenced last holiday, all hopeful, too. My son's quiet was response sufficient. I suspected so, she expressed softly, then pivoting to me. Mrs. Hayes, I regret the uncomfortable spot my relatives and I have placed you in today. Obviously, we were functioning under incorrect details. Her composure astonished me. No regret needed, Olivia. And please address me, Eleanor. A tap at the portal disrupted us. Melanie glanced in. We are prepared to continue whenever you are. The illumination is especially lovely right now for the sea setting. We will be there shortly, I guaranteed her. When she had departed, Olivia gazed between my son and me. For what it matters, my folks are readjusting. My dad is especially captivated by your true account, Eleanor. Constructing a firm from zero is far more commendable than receiving or buying triumph. She directed a meaningful glance at my son. You do not wish to depart? My son inquired warily. Olivia pondered him for an extended instant. I have not determined yet. Currently, I am eager to listen to the remainder of your mom's discussion. The actual account, not the fabrication you have been promoting to me. As we headed back to the balcony, the mood had altered abruptly. The Westfields' prior outrage had moderated into something more intricate. Victor's face indicated unwilling curiosity, while Camila kept a courteous but distant exterior. Eleanor. Melanie welcomed me as I assumed my chair. I was hoping we could address your views on generational riches and principles in this upcoming part. Particularly, how you have handled imparting monetary concepts to your relatives. I detected the mild stress on her terms. She was offering me an ideal entry to tackle the obvious issue on the balcony without outright shaming anyone. I think riches brings duty more than advantage. I commenced cautiously. In nurturing my offspring, I attempted to stress that funds are an instrument, not a gauge of individual value, that real safety derives from cultivating abilities and personality, not gathering items. The lens swept mildly to incorporate my son in the view, recording his discomfort. Some could contend that is simple to express when you possess riches. Melanie proposed the extravagance of rejecting extravagance, in a manner. Maybe, I recognized, but I established my firm from zero after turning into a youthful widow. For numerous years, humility was not a conceptual selection, but a requirement. By the period monetary triumph arrived, those principles were profoundly embedded. And yet, Victor Westfield inserted suddenly, you have now acquired one of the most renowned estates on this shore. That appears like a deviation from humility. All gazes turned to him, astonished by his straightforward involvement. A reasonable remark, I admitted. This dwelling is undoubtedly a luxury. But even here, I have attempted to harmonize the acquisition with wider principles, preservation, learning, societal gain. The estate fulfills intents beyond individual standing. Captivating, Melanie remarked. Mr. Westfield. As somebody who has established a brand especially around extravagance and standing symbols, how do you regard this method to riches? Victor adjusted mildly, obviously identifying the chance to advance his firm despite the uneasy conditions. Westfield Luxury Brands honors superiority and attainment. We think triumph ought to be apparent, concrete. There is a particular sincerity in recognizing one's status instead of diminishing it. Intriguing that you employ the term sincerity, Melanie observed. Eleanor, your ideas. I weighed my answer cautiously, conscious that the lens was recording not merely my terms, but the delicate interactions among all of us. I think sincerity derives from harmony between principles and behaviors, not between status and exhibitions, I responded. The issue is not if riches is apparent, but if it is utilized in support of one's authentic beliefs. As the discussion went on, I observed Olivia observing me with growing curiosity. My son, meanwhile, had withdrawn to the boundary of the view, a spectator to the developing readjustment of accounts, both his invented one and the Westfield's consumerist outlook against the unanticipated fact of my existence. The waterfront estate that was meant to be his victory had become rather the platform for his most open defeat, and maybe, if he was prepared to absorb from it, the start of something more sincere than anything he had concocted. I would like to move our talk to something I find especially captivating about your method, Eleanor, Melanie expressed, adeptly directing the discussion into its next stage. You have referenced employing this estate as an ocean learning facility. Could you expand on that idea? I sensed myself ease mildly, shifting into a domain I was truly enthusiastic about. The shore here hosts an exceptional habitat that many individuals, even residents, understand very little about. I am transforming the vessel storage and lower greenery into an engaging educational area where student groups can investigate intertidal basins, ocean preservation, and shore biology. So, this several million-dollar estate will basically turn partially communal, Melanie explained. Several days each week. Yes, I verified. I am collaborating with nearby ecological instructors to create initiatives that will attract pupils from throughout the region, especially from underprivileged institutions. From the edge of my vision, I could observe Camila Westfield's face of scarcely hidden skepticism. The notion of deliberately sharing premium waterfront estate with community school kids obviously struck her as unfathomable. That is remarkably liberal, Victor remarked, his inflection implying he was not totally persuaded of my honesty. Most individuals buying estate at this cost are mainly worried about seclusion and uniqueness. I discovered that riches gains more significance when distributed intentionally, I responded. The pleasure of having kids learn and explore here will greatly surpass whatever enjoyment I might obtain from maintaining the estate totally secluded. Melanie assented reflectively. This belief appears to contradict dominant views about premium estates, the Westfields, as pioneers in the premium sector. What is your viewpoint on this sort of, shall we express, equalization of advantage? It was an expert questioner's tactic, opposing my method with the Westfield's whole enterprise model in a manner they could not readily reject without appearing insensitive. Camilla cleared her voice. Well, Westfield Luxury brand surely supports charity, she commenced cautiously. We contribute to various causes yearly, but we also acknowledge that uniqueness possesses intrinsic worth. That is what our clients are acquiring, something not all can possess. Intriguing difference, Melanie noted. Benevolent contributions versus immediate entry. Eleanor, you appear to be adopting the latter method. I think in encountering generosity firsthand, I clarified. Issuing donations is worthwhile and essential, but there is something potent about actually opening your area to others. As I discussed my intentions for the learning facility, I observed my son observing me with a look I had not witnessed in years, something akin to the respect he had displayed as a youth when I had described my construction plans to him at our dining surface. Back then, he had been proud of my labor before position, worry, and societal assent had distorted his outlook. Would you provide us a walkthrough of the zones that will become the learning facility? Melanie inquired. Certainly, I consented, rising from my seat. As our assembly proceeded through the dwelling toward the shore trail leading to the vessel storage, I discovered Olivia strolling beside me, having purposefully distanced herself from both my son and her folks. Your concept for this location is remarkable, she expressed softly, just between us. I examined sustainable building in university before my folks urged me toward internal styling. This disclosure astonished me. You possess a building foundation? She assented. I focused on biophilic styling, merging natural components into constructed settings, but my dad thought it was too specialized to be lucrative. That is precisely the method I applied in planning this dwelling, I informed her, truly engaged. The manner the building adheres to the natural outlines of the shore, the utilization of regional substances, I observed right away, she interjected, thrill-piercing her restrained manner. The way you have located the panes to follow the sun's route, the natural ventilation system employing the sea wind. It is ingenious. Ahead of us, the filming team was preparing at the vessel storage while my son and the Westfields trailed at a space. This brief seclusion provided me a chance to view Olivia as a person distinct from her folks' consumerist principles and my son's deceptions. What would you pursue if you could style freely without worry for what others deem suitable? I questioned her. She pondered this earnestly. I would concentrate on developing areas that mend the separation between people and nature, structures that instruct their occupants to exist more in harmony with the surroundings. A longing grin crossed her countenance. Precisely what you are accomplishing here. In fact, it is never too delayed to follow that, I proposed softly. Maybe, she whispered, her stare drifting toward my son, who was now involved in what seemed a strained talk with her dad. At the vessel storage, I clarified my intentions for altering the area into educational stations where kids could inspect sea samples, perform basic tests, and study about ocean preservation. The lens seized my eagerness as I displayed initial drawings of the redesign. The most thrilling element will be the directed intertidal basin investigations, I clarified, guiding everyone down the timber steps to the stony beach below the estate. This portion of shore possesses some of the most varied intertidal basin habitats in the area, but it is usually unreachable due to private estate limits. As we cautiously traversed the stones, I indicated sea stars, anemones, and small crabs visible in the shallow basins. The lens handler recorded close views of the tiny sea realm, while Melanie posed considerate inquiries about preservation initiatives. I observed Victor Westfield had stayed at the top of the stairs, evidently reluctant to hazard his costly shoes on the damp stones. Camilla had advanced midway down, but positioned at a distance, appearing uneasy in her unsuitable shoes. In opposition, Olivia had enthusiastically joined me at the rim of a notably bright intertidal basin, crouching without concern for her branded summer outfit as she inspected a vivid orange sea star. "This is remarkable," she exhaled, sincere amazement in her tone. "I had no notion there was such variety right here." "Most individuals do not," I concurred. "That is precisely why instruction is so vital." When we headed back to the primary dwelling, the interaction had changed markedly. The original surprise and uneasiness had developed into something more intricate. A sort of reluctant reevaluation occurring among the Westfields, an unsure lingering on my son's part, and a developing liveliness from Olivia that appeared to astonish her folks. During a short recording pause, I overheard Victor speaking softly but strongly to my son near the cooking area. "You distorted yourself entirely," he was expressing. "That is not merely dishonest, it is weak enterprise tactic. No alliance can be established on invented qualifications." "I never intended to deceive anyone," my son objected feebly. "I merely desired to captivate us," Victor concluded for him. "Yes, that much is clear, but ponder this. If you had been honest about your situation and your mom's successes from the start, I might truly have been engaged in your promotional ideas. Now, I doubt everything you have ever informed us." I departed before they detected me, not wishing to shame my son further by observing his reprimand. Despite my dissatisfaction in his conduct, he was still my offspring, and there were boundaries to the teaching I had aimed to impart. Back on the balcony, Melanie neared me with clear contentment. "This is developing into one of our most engaging installments ever," she shared. "The opposition between various beliefs of riches, the household interactions, it is screen treasure." "I hope it is not too uneasy for all," I expressed, abruptly worried that my planned teaching had escalated into something more openly degrading than I had meant. Melanie grinned perceptively. "Occasionally unease is the cost of development." And regarding development, she looked at her records. "I would adore to address how your outlook on riches and intent developed during your profession. Was there a pivotal instant that formed your beliefs?" As the lenses started operating again, I contemplated how this day, which had commenced as a basic object teaching for my offspring, had suddenly become a communal scrutiny of principles, sincerity, and the genuine significance of triumph. "The pivotal instant," I expressed, positioning myself back in my seat as the lenses centered on me, occurred early in my profession, about 5 years after establishing my firm. The late afternoon glow projected a warm radiance across the balcony, lighting everyone in what image capturers term the enchanted period, that ideal illumination that eases boundaries and adds heat to every plane it contacts. Even the Westfields appeared less stiff in this tender glow. I had just finished my initial genuinely lucrative project, a combined-purpose estate that had drawn notable notice in the field. A premium vehicle seller contacted me, proposing that as a prosperous builder, I should advance to a car that mirrored my fresh standing. I grinned at the recollection. I recall positioning in that display area examining vehicles that cost more than my parents' dwelling had. Sensing this odd pressure to demonstrate I fit in the realm I was joining, I almost authorized the documents. "What halted you?" Melanie questioned. "My offspring, in fact," I glanced at my son, whose face registered astonishment. He was about 7 then, just beginning to grasp funds. That night, he inquired why I required a costly vehicle when our Honda functioned flawlessly. His naive inquiry made me recognize I was about to make an acquisition solely to captivate people I did not even esteem. The lens swept subtly to seize my son's response, a combination of embarrassment and what seemed sincere contemplation. From that juncture onward, I proceeded. I made a deliberate choice to gauge triumph by influence rather than belongings. Every initiative my firm undertook had to fulfill an intent beyond earnings. Ecological durability, neighborhood improvement, or societal gain. It was not always the swiftest route to riches, but it generated significance that no premium buy could supply. "Yet here we are," Melanie noted, signaling at the splendid waterfront residence encircling us in what many would deem the supreme premium estate. Yes, I recognized with a minor chuckle. I am not resistant to valuing beauty and comfort, but even this luxury fulfills intents beyond standing, instruction, preservation, and, honestly, a location to finally relish the results of decades of labor. The distinction is that I do not require this dwelling to confirm my value or indicate my triumph to others. Victor Westfield adjusted in his chair, appearing vaguely uneasy. As the creator of a brand constructed wholly around standing indication, my beliefs posed a direct opposition to his enterprise model. Some might term that stance advantaged, Camila inserted, a mild, protective note in her tone. The extravagance of rejecting extravagance, in a manner. A reasonable point, I admitted. There is surely advantage in possessing choices whatsoever. But I upheld the same beliefs even when my firm was struggling. When seeming triumphant might have truly assisted me obtain backers or customers' sincerity as an enterprise tactic, Melanie outlined Mr. Westfield as somebody who has constructed a worldwide brand. What is your viewpoint on this method versus the hopeful promotion that propels much of the premium industry? Victor adjusted, obviously identifying both the opposition and the chance to situate himself. Westfield Luxury Brands vends more than goods. We vend attainment. The apparent rewards of triumph encourage further triumph. There is a mental advantage to exhibiting one's successes. And yet, I propose softly, those exhibitions often result in exactly the sort of distortion we have observed today. I maintain my inflection light, evading direct mention to my son's deceit, but the suggestion lingered in the atmosphere. An uneasy quiet followed, interrupted when Olivia suddenly contributed. I think both viewpoints possess legitimacy, she expressed, astonishing everyone. Appreciation for superiority and artistry does not have to equal position fixation, and dismissing materialism does not mean forsaking aesthetics or comfort. Melanie's gaze brightened at this reflective addition from the formerly silent young female. An intriguing compromise. Olivia, as somebody from a younger cohort, do you observe attitudes toward evident riches altering among your contemporaries? Definitely, Olivia answered with increasing assurance. Many of my peers are more concerned with encounters and influence than purchases. Sincerity is prized over flawlessness. Social platforms have ironically made obvious indulgence both more widespread and more critiqued. I observed her with fresh appreciation as she expressed a balanced viewpoint that recognized both her folks' realm and the principles I had voiced. Maybe my son had selected more astutely than I had credited. The swing always oscillates, Victor remarked, his inflection mildly rejecting. Young individuals dismiss their parents' principles until they possess their own triumph to safeguard and exhibit. Or maybe, Olivia responded with sudden resoluteness. We have merely recognized that gauging value through belongings is ultimately empty. She glanced at my son, especially when those belongings are not even genuinely yours. The sharp remark landed like a pebble falling into calm water, generating waves of response across everyone there. My son recoiled visibly, while Camila's brows elevated in astonishment at her daughter's bluntness. Melanie, always the adept questioner, identified the ideal instant to alter course. Eleanor, this leads us to something I am especially eager about. How do you equilibrium seclusion with intent when opening your residence for instructional initiatives, particularly in an estate of this quality? Thankful for the redirection, I outline the practical elements of the Ocean Learning Facility, the distinct entry points, the planned initiatives, the harmony between personal residing area and instructional zones. As I spoke, I observed my son had shifted to the rim of the balcony, gazing at the sea with a look I could not quite interpret. When the lenses halted again for a short gear adjustment, he neared me tentatively. "Can we converse for an instant?" he inquired softly. I assented, following him to a comparatively secluded corner of the balcony. "I have been contemplating what you expressed earlier," he commenced, his tone unusually muted. "About establishing bonds on honesty rather than inventions." "Yes," I urged when he hesitated. "You were correct." The confession appeared challenging for him. I have devoted so long attempting to project an image that I have lost sight of who I truly am and what I have truly attained. His earnestness astonished me. I had anticipated protectiveness, maybe even ongoing rationalization for his deceptions. This glimpse of self-recognition was unanticipated. The ironic element, he proceeded with an empty chuckle, is that I have been so occupied attempting to captivate the Westfields with items I do not possess, that I never troubled to discover that Olivia and I might truly share principles I did not know I possessed. I traced his stare to where Olivia positioned animatedly addressing something with Melanie, her sincere eagerness evident in her motions and face. "She is discussing eco-friendly building," my son expressed. "Did you know that was her enthusiasm before her folks urged her toward internal styling?" I did not. I was too occupied feigning to possess waterfront estate to truly learn about the female I am seeing. The self-reproach in his tone affected me. "It is not too delayed to commence anew with integrity," I proposed tenderly. "Maybe." He did not sound persuaded. Though after today's degradation, I doubt the Westfields will permit their daughter anywhere near me. Before I could answer, Melanie summoned us back to resume recording. As we returned to our positions, I observed Victor Westfield examining me with a look I could not quite decipher, something between estimation and reluctant admiration. Whatever teaching I had meant to impart today had clearly evolved in unanticipated directions, impacting not just my son, but everyone there in ways I had not foreseen. Before we proceed with our primary discussion, Melanie expressed as recording restarted, "I would like to investigate an intriguing interaction that has arisen today." Her stare moved deliberately between my son and me. "Eleanor, you have constructed your triumph on sincerity and intent, yet your offspring appears to have adopted a different method to establishing his identity. Would you mind sharing your ideas on that opposition?" The inquiry lingered in the atmosphere, loaded with potential for further degradation or recovery. I selected my terms cautiously, aware that my answer would form not just the discussion, but possibly my bond with my son moving ahead. "Every guardian hopes to transmit their principles to their offspring," I commenced reflectively. "But ultimately, each individual must uncover their own route. My son possesses talents and qualities completely his own. Imagination, interpersonal acumen, and capacity to bond with individuals that I have always respected." I glanced at my offspring, whose astonishment at my favorable evaluation was evident. "His path is his own, with its own teachings and revelations, including perhaps today's." "And what about you, James?" Melanie inquired, directing the focus straight on him. "Has your viewpoint altered during today's unanticipated disclosures?" My son wavered, visibly collecting his bravery. For a moment, I feared he might withdraw into protectiveness or fabricated allure, his usual reactions to unease. Instead, he straightened his posture and met Melanie's stare directly. "I have devoted years attempting to captivate people by feigning to be something I am not," he expressed, his tone gaining power as he spoke. "Today has been enlightening, degrading, yes, but also essential." The openness of his answer appeared to astonish everyone, including the Westfields. Victor's brows rose mildly, while Camila's impeccably preserved face softened nearly unnoticeably. "Would you expand on that?" Melanie urged. "I have been so concentrated on projecting triumph that I have neglected to actually construct it," my son proceeded. "Observing my mom today, hearing her describe establishing something meaningful from zero made me recognize how superficial my method has been in comparison." His stare shifted to Olivia briefly before returning to Melanie. "I have also recognized that in trying so diligently to captivate others with what I thought they prized, I missed chances to connect around what might truly count." A reflective quiet followed this confession. The lenses seized the scene perfectly. My son's vulnerable honesty, my quietly supportive existence, the Westfield's readjusting evaluation, and Olivia's complex face somewhere between distress and respect. "Mr. and Mrs. Westfield," Melanie expressed, fluidly expanding the talk. "As guardians yourselves, how do you regard this instant? Has today's encounter altered your viewpoint on triumph and its depictions?" Camila deferred to Victor with a subtle assent. He cleared his voice, appearing mildly uneasy at being placed on the spot. "Our brand is constructed on the premise that superiority and attainment should be evident," he declared, reverting to business language as a barrier. "We uphold that belief." "Dad," Olivia inserted with astonishing resoluteness. "That is a promotional declaration, not a personal answer." Victor appeared startled by his daughter's opposition. After a moment, his business exterior cracked mildly. "Very well. Personally, I find myself reevaluating certain presumptions today." "Such as," Melanie prompted, "such as the idea that value must be outwardly confirmed to be genuine," he confessed reluctantly. Mrs. Hayes Eleanor has established something undeniably triumphant without the adornments we typically link with such attainment. That is provocative. It was the nearest thing to an admission I anticipated from a man who had constructed a powerhouse on the premise that outward confirmation was vital. Coming from him, it held considerable importance. "And you, Mrs. Westfield?" Melanie inquired, pivoting to Camilla. Camilla modified her branded armlet, purchasing an instant to compose her ideas. "I think presentation counts," she commenced cautiously. "But perhaps essence counts more. Eleanor possesses both in her own manner. It is not the method I would select, but I cannot deny its sincerity." The confession appeared to cost her something, as though recognizing the legitimacy of a different principle system threatened the bases of her own. "Olivia," Melanie proceeded, including the younger female in this household reflection. "Your position between these different beliefs. Where do you locate yourself?" Olivia's answer came without wavering. "I have devoted years suppressing my own enthusiasms to fit my parents' anticipations." She glanced apologetically at her mother and father. "Observing Eleanor speak about intent and influence has reminded me of what I actually care about. Developing areas that connect people with the natural world, not just showcasing riches." The bare honesty of her statement appeared to stun her folks. Victor looked as though he might protest, then subsided, a fresh uncertainty in his face. "It seems we are observing several readjustments today," Melanie noted. "Eleanor, did you foresee this result when you consented to this discussion?" I grinned mildly. "I foresaw a conversation about principles and selections. The specific form it has taken has been instructive for everyone, I think, including you." Melanie inquired perceptively. "Especially me," I recognized. "I have been reminded that sincerity requires bravery, something I am seeing from unanticipated sources today." I glanced meaningfully at my son and Olivia. As the discussion proceeded, focusing now on the building features of the dwelling and my intentions for its instructional use, I observed a subtle but significant alteration in the group interactions. My son had shifted closer to Olivia, their posture suggesting a tentative reconnection based on this fresh, more honest basis. Victor and Camilla positioned mildly apart, their faces suggesting internal reevaluation rather than the earlier judgment and disapproval. When Melanie requested a concluding pause before the ending part, Victor neared me with unanticipated bluntness. "Your offspring distorted himself quite substantially," he declared without introduction. "He did," I concurred, neither defending nor condemning my son's actions. "Yet you speak of him with sincere pride and affection, despite his deceit." "He is my offspring," I expressed simply. "I can disapprove of his selections while still loving who he is and believing in who he can become." Victor appeared to grapple with this notion. "At Westfield, we have zero tolerance for distortion. Sincerity in our goods is paramount, even as we vend the aspiration they represent." Perhaps the distinction, I propose softly, is that my son is not a good to be assessed against standards. He is a person in progress, absorbing from his errors. Something altered in Victor's face. A softening around the gaze, a mild relaxation of his stiff posture. "Olivia seems quite captivated with your method to building and ecological instruction," he expressed, altering the topic suddenly. "She is knowledgeable and enthusiastic about eco-friendly design," I verified. "You have nurtured a reflective young female with genuine talent." "We may have misguided that talent," he confessed with evident difficulty. "Camilla and I believed internal design provided more security and standing than ecological building. It is not too delayed for her to pursue her true interests," I pointed out. Victor glanced to where Olivia was inspecting the eco-friendly materials used in my balcony construction, her liveliness obvious from afar. "No," he expressed softly. "Perhaps it is not." As the glow began its descent toward the horizon, bathing the waterfront estate in spectacular shades of tangerine and rose, I recognized that this day, begun as a deliberate teaching in humility, had catalyzed unanticipated reconsiderations for everyone there, including myself. The concluding part of the discussion occurred as the glow started to set, projecting long warm beams across the balcony and transforming the sea into a glistening canvas of tangerine and lavender. Melanie had located us perfectly to seize this magnificent setting, the natural splendor emphasizing my points about safeguarding the shore environment. As we wrap up our talk, Melanie expressed, "I would like to address the future." Eleanor, what do you imagine for this estate and your preservation efforts 5 years from now? I outlined my vision for the ocean learning facility, the indigenous flora restoration along the cliffs, and the study partnerships I hope to establish with nearby universities. As I spoke, I observed Olivia listening with complete focus, occasionally assenting in agreement or leaning forward when I mentioned particular biological approaches. That is an ambitious plan, Melanie noted. Will you oversee these efforts personally? Initially, yes, I verified, though I hope to eventually assemble a team of enthusiastic environmentalists and instructors who share this vision. The right individuals with the right expertise could expand these programs far beyond what I might achieve alone. Melanie pivoted mildly to incorporate the others in the view. This seems like a suitable instant to broaden our talk. Today has been unanticipated for everyone. Before we wrap up, I would like to hear final ideas from each of you about what you are taking away from this encounter. She motioned toward my son first, giving him the chance to reframe his account. He inhaled deeply. I arrived here today planning to captivate people with things that were not mine. Not just this estate, but achievements and standing I have not earned. His tone grew firmer as he continued. What I am taking away is the comprehension that genuine accomplishment requires more than outward shows. My mom built something real and meaningful. That is the model I should have been following all along. Olivia Melanie urged reconsidering what triumph actually signifies, she expressed reflectively. I have devoted years suppressing my enthusiasm for eco-friendly design because it did not fit certain expectations of prestige or profitability. Today has reminded me that meaningful influence matters more than impressive titles or socially approved career paths. Her folks exchanged glances at this declaration, but remained silent as Melanie pivoted to them next. Mr. and Mrs. Westfield, as leaders in the premium sector, has today's discussion challenged any of your assumptions about riches and its presentation? Camila spoke first, astonishing everyone. I have built my life around certain certainties, she expressed cautiously. That quality must be visible. That achievement deserves display. That refinement sets one apart. She glanced around the elegant yet understated space I had created. Today has suggested there might be other approaches equally worthy of respect. Victor assented, adding, in business, we are taught that perception often counts more than reality. Eleanor has demonstrated that authentic essence can be more powerful than carefully curated appearances. He adjusted mildly, reverting to his more formal manner. Though I maintain that there is nothing wrong with quality being visible when it is genuinely present. A balanced viewpoint Melanie recognized before pivoting back to me. Eleanor, final thoughts. The lens focused on me as I considered my response. I believe we all create narratives about triumph. What it looks like, how it is measured, what it requires. Today has reminded me that those narratives need regular examination. Are they serving our true purpose? Are they aligned with our actual values? Or have they become constraints rather than guides? I glanced at my son, adding, I am also reminded that we all make mistakes in how we present ourselves to the world. The question is not whether we stumble, but how we recover and what we learn from those moments. Beautiful, Melanie expressed with sincere appreciation. Thank you all for what has been one of our most illuminating episodes. She pivoted to address the lens directly for her closing statement. From Seaglass Cove, this is Melanie Winters for Properties with Purpose, reminding you that our spaces reflect not just our taste, but our values and vision for the world we wish to create. And stop, called the overseer. That is complete. Absolutely fantastic material, everyone. As the filming team began disassembling equipment and packing up lenses, an awkward quiet fell over our assembly. The artificial structure of the discussion had provided a framework for our interactions. Without it, the raw reality of what had transpired hung in the air between us. My son neared me first, his face a mixture of remorse and uncertainty. Mom, he commenced, then halted, seeming to struggle for words. I regret all of this. For trying to claim your achievements as mine, for being embarrassed by your choices instead of proud of what you have built. The simple apology touched me more deeply than I had expected. "Thank you," I expressed quietly. Though this probably was not the gentlest way to teach that lesson, a faint grin crossed his face. Subtlety has never been my strong suit. Apparently, I come by that honestly. He glanced around at the retreating film crew, though I never imagined my reckoning would be quite so public. "If it helps, I offered the episode will not air for several weeks. Plenty of time to prepare your friends for the revelation that you do not actually own oceanfront property." His wince suggested this consideration had not yet occurred to him. "Right. That is going to be awkward or liberating," I suggested. "Authenticity usually is eventually." Our conversation was interrupted by Olivia joining us, her face determined despite obvious nervousness. "Mrs. Hayes, Eleanor," she commenced. "I want to apologize for my part in this situation. I should have questioned James more thoroughly instead of simply accepting his claims." "You believe someone you cared about," I replied gently. "That is not a character flaw." She assented, acknowledging this, then continued with more confidence. "I am also hoping to speak with you further about your sustainable design approach. Your integration of native landscaping with the architectural elements is exactly what I focused on in my thesis project." Her genuine enthusiasm was impossible to miss, a stark contrast to the polished social performance she had initially presented. "I would be happy to discuss it," I assured her. "Perhaps you would be interested in consulting on the educational center designs. We are still in the early planning stages, and your background sounds particularly relevant." Her eyes widened slightly. "I would be honored," she expressed, a new animation entering her voice as she began describing some initial thoughts about the space. As they talked, I noticed Victor and Camila observing from a distance, their expressions complex. Victor caught my eye and approached, his wife following a step behind. "This has been an illuminating afternoon," he expressed, his corporate polish slightly diminished by genuine uncertainty. "Not at all what we expected when James invited us to see his beach house." "Life rarely matches our expectations," I observed. "Sometimes that is for the best." "Perhaps," he recognized. "Your son's methods were questionable, but I am beginning to suspect his judgment in other areas might be sound." His gaze shifted meaningfully to where Olivia was now animatedly discussing design concepts with my son. Her previous reserve completely vanished. "She has not shown this much passion for anything in years," Camila added quietly. "Not since we convinced her to pursue interior design instead of that environmental architecture program she wanted." The admission revealed more about their family dynamic than perhaps she had intended. I chose my response carefully. It is never too late to reconsider our paths. For any of us, as the evening light faded into dusk, what had begun as a deliberate lesson in humility had transformed into something far more nuanced, a recalibration of values and expectations for everyone involved, including myself. 2 weeks passed before I heard from my son again. During that time, I divided my attention between finalizing plans for the Marine Education Center and fielding excited calls from Melanie about the episode's editing progress. According to her, the network executives were thrilled with the unexpected family drama and authentic emotional journeys captured on camera. "They are calling it our most compelling episode yet," she informed me during our latest call. The contrast between different philosophies of wealth, the real-time recalibrations of relationships. It is exactly the kind of meaningful content we aim for. "I am glad something positive came from what was frankly an awkward situation for everyone," I replied, still slightly uncomfortable with how public our family drama would soon become. "That is the beauty of it," Melanie insisted. The awkwardness evolved into genuine reflection. Those moments of truth are television gold. After we disconnected, I wandered onto the veranda, coffee in hand, contemplating how differently the day had unfolded from my expectations. I had intended a simple lesson for my son, a necessary but controlled revelation of his deception. Instead, it had spiraled into something far more complex, affecting not just my offspring, but the Westfields as well, revealing truths none of us had fully acknowledged. The sound of tires on the gravel driveway interrupted my thoughts. Through the coastal pines, I glimpsed my son's car pulling up, alone, without the Westfields or Olivia accompanying him. I met him at the front door, uncertain what to expect. His expression was serious, but calm as he greeted me. "Hey, Mom. Got time for a coffee and conversation?" "Always," I assured him, leading him to the kitchen, where I poured him a cup. We settled at the breakfast nook overlooking the garden, a moment of silence stretching between us before my son finally spoke. "I have been doing a lot of thinking since that day," he began, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "About why I felt the need to present myself as something I am not, about what I actually value versus what I thought I should value." And I prompted gently when he paused. "And I have made some decisions," he continued with newfound resolve. "First, I have started being completely honest about my actual position and achievements at work. No more exaggerations or implications that I am further up the ladder than I am." "How has that been?" I asked, genuinely curious. A small smile crossed his face. "Terrifying at first, then weirdly liberating. Turns out most people do not actually care what my title is as long as I do good work." "Imagine that," I commented mildly, hiding my pleasure at this realization. "Second," he continued, "I have decided to redirect my career path. The marketing work I have been doing, it is fine, but it is not what I am passionate about." He hesitated, then added, "I have applied for an MBA program with a focus on sustainable business development. If I am accepted, I would start next fall." This revelation surprised me. "That is a significant change." "What prompted it?" "Watching you talk about your work," he admitted. "Seeing the genuine fulfillment you get from creating developments with purpose beyond profit. I want that kind of satisfaction from my career." I felt a warmth spread through me at his words. Despite my unconventional method, perhaps the lesson had served its intended purpose after all. "What about Olivia?" I asked carefully. After everything that happened, my son's expression softened. "That is actually the most unexpected development." He set down his coffee mug. "We are still together, but something fundamental has changed between us. Once we both dropped the pretenses, we discovered we actually connect on deeper levels than social climbing and status symbols." "I am glad to hear that," I said sincerely. She seemed to have depth that her parents' influence had somewhat submerged. "You do not know the half of it," my son replied with a genuine smile. "Since your interview, she has been in intense discussions with her parents about returning to her original passion for sustainable architecture. Victor and Camila are actually considering funding a new division of their company focused on eco-luxury development, with Olivia potentially leading the design team." This news genuinely surprised me. That is not the outcome I would have predicted from the Westfields. "Me neither," my son agreed. "But apparently your interview affected Victor more than he initially let on. Something about authentic luxury, having deeper meaning than surface appearances, really resonated with him. He has been researching sustainable luxury markets and found there is significant untapped potential there, converting a revelation into a business opportunity," I observed with wry amusement. "Very on brand for Victor." "Exactly." My son laughed. "But the interesting thing is this might actually allow Olivia to align her true interests with the family business instead of suppressing them." His expression grew more serious, which brings me to another reason for my visit. "She has been hoping to consult with you about sustainable oceanfront development. Your expertise combined with her design background could be valuable for both the education center and potentially for this new Westfield venture." I considered this unexpected proposition. "I would be open to discussions," I said carefully. "Though I would want to be certain their commitment to sustainability is genuine, not just a marketing angle." "That is fair." My son acknowledged. "Olivia feels the same way actually. She does not want to compromise environmental principles for profit margins." "She sounds increasingly like someone I would enjoy working with," I noted, pleased by this evolution. My son hesitated, then added, "There is one more thing you should know. The episode of Properties with Purpose is scheduled to air in 3 weeks." I assented, having already been informed by Melanie. "Are you concerned about that?" "I was," he admitted. "The thought of everyone seeing me exposed as a fraud was terrifying." He straightened slightly. "But I have decided to host a viewing party, invite friends, colleagues, everyone who has heard me exaggerate or misrepresent my circumstances over the years." I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "That is a bold choice." "It is the right one," he said with newfound conviction. "I can either hide from the truth or own it completely. I am choosing the latter." Looking at my son across the table, I saw something I had not fully recognized before. A quiet strength emerging from beneath the facade he had maintained for so long. Perhaps it had always been there, waiting for the right circumstances to reveal itself. "I am proud of you," I said simply. Not for any achievement or status, but for this willingness to face reality and grow from it. "I had a good example," he replied, meeting my gaze directly. "It just took me a while to appreciate it." As we finished our coffee and moved to the veranda to discuss his potential MBA programs in more detail, I reflected on how differently this conversation might have gone if I had confronted him privately instead of orchestrating the public revelation. Would he have truly understood the lesson? Would the Westfields have reconsidered their values? Would Olivia have found the courage to reclaim her passion? Sometimes I realize the most uncomfortable moments lead to the most necessary growth. A principle I had applied in my business for decades, but had hesitated to bring into my personal relationships. Perhaps in that regard, my son and I had both learned something valuable from that unexpected afternoon. The evening of the broadcast arrived with a sense of surrealism that I could not quite shake. 3 weeks had transformed what began as a private lesson into a public event, one that would expose our family dynamics and the Westfields' reactions to millions of viewers nationwide. My son had followed through on his bold decision, hosting a viewing party at his apartment for friends, colleagues, and even his direct supervisors from work. He had invited me as well, but I declined, preferring to watch in the privacy of my home. Some experiences were best processed without an audience, and seeing myself on national television definitely qualified. I settled onto my veranda with a glass of wine as the autumn sunset painted the ocean in deepening shades of amber and violet. My phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Episode airing in 5 minutes. Highest pre-broadcast interest we have ever had. You are about to become a minor celebrity, Eleanor." The thought was more disconcerting than flattering. I had built my career on substance over spotlight, focusing on my projects rather than personal recognition. Now, ironically, my philosophy of understated accomplishment was about to be broadcast to a national audience. My television was rarely used, but tonight I had positioned it for optimal viewing from my favorite chair. As the opening music for Properties with Purpose began, I took a deep breath and prepared to watch our family drama unfold through the lens of professional editing and production values. Melanie's introduction was elegant and enticing. Today, we visit a stunning oceanfront property in Seaglass Cove, a home that represents not just architectural achievement, but a profound statement about wealth, purpose, and authenticity. What began as a straightforward profile evolved into something far more revealing about how we define success and what we value most. The camera panned over my property, capturing its integration with the coastal landscape before settling on me, seated on the veranda in that golden afternoon light. I looked more polished than I remembered, the subtle work of the makeup artist evident in my camera-ready appearance. The initial interview unfolded much as I recalled, with my explanation of the house's environmental features and planned educational center. Then came the pivotal moment, my son rounding the corner with the Westfields, his expression transforming from confident tour guide to stunned disbelief in real time. The editors had captured the reveal perfectly, cutting between my son's shocked face, the Westfield's confused reactions, and my calm acknowledgement of the situation. The background music shifted subtly, enhancing the dramatic tension without overplaying it. What followed was a masterfully constructed narrative of revelation and recalibration. The production team had artfully condensed hours of footage into a compelling 40-minute journey, highlighting key moments of confrontation, reflection, and gradual understanding. I winced slightly at certain moments. The raw hurt on my son's face when his deception was exposed. Victor Westfield's initial condescension, my own occasionally pointed observations about materialism. Yet, the overall arc was redemptive rather than exploitative, showing genuine evolution in everyone's perspectives. Most surprising was how clearly the episode captured transformations I had not fully registered in the moment. Olivia's gradual animation as she reconnected with her passion for sustainable design. Camila Westfield's subtle shift from dismissive to thoughtful as the interview progressed. The moment when my son stopped defending himself and began truly listening. The final segment, filmed as the sunset bathed us all in golden light, carried a poignancy that even I found moving. Our closing reflections on authenticity, purpose, and the true meaning of success felt not like rehearsed platitudes, but hard-won insights emerging from genuine discomfort. Melanie's closing statement tied everything together. Perhaps true luxury is not found in what we own or display, but in the alignment between our values and our choices, the authentic expression of purpose that gives meaning to success. From Seaglass Cove, this is Melanie Winters for Properties with Purpose. As the credits rolled, I sat in silence, processing the strange experience of seeing my private life transformed into public narrative. The story told was true, yet inevitably simplified and shaped by editing choices and narrative requirements. A complex human experience distilled into compelling television. My phone began buzzing with messages almost immediately. The first was from my son. Well, that was simultaneously more humiliating and more flattering than I expected. The viewing party is alternating between mortified silence and heartfelt conversations. I think it is going well. I smiled at his uncertainty, imagining the scene at his apartment. Colleagues and friends witnessing his most vulnerable moment, followed by his genuine growth. It was either an act of remarkable courage or spectacular miscalculation. Perhaps both. The next message came surprisingly from Victor Westfield. Eleanor, having now seen the final edit, I must acknowledge the episode captured something valuable. Our discussions since that day have led to significant reconsiderations, both personal and professional. Camila and I would appreciate an opportunity to continue our conversation about sustainable luxury concepts if you are amenable. Before I could respond, another text arrived from Olivia. The episode just finished airing. My parents' phones are exploding with reactions from their social circle. Some confusion, some criticism, but also surprising support for the authentic luxury concept Dad's been exploring. And I have already received 3 inquiries about sustainable design consultation. Would still love to discuss potential collaboration on your education center when you are ready. The messages continued arriving from former colleagues, industry acquaintances who recognized me, friends who had not realized the full scope of my achievements. The quiet, purpose-driven life I had cultivated was suddenly illuminated by unexpected attention. I stepped away from my phone to refill my wine glass, taking a moment on the veranda to absorb the night air and collect my thoughts. The ocean stretched dark and limitless before me, a reminder of perspective. This momentary visibility, whether welcome or not, was just that, momentary. What would endure were the real-world impacts of my work, the education center under development, the environmental protections I had established, and perhaps most significantly, the transformed understanding between my son and me. As if summoned by my thoughts, a final text arrived from my son. Party winding down. People are leaving with a lot to think about. So am I. Thank you for the hardest, most important lesson I have ever received. I have spent years trying to impress others by pretending to be something I am not. Tonight helped me finally understand that the only lasting impression worth making comes from genuine accomplishment and authentic purpose. I think I am ready to build something real. Maybe tomorrow we could talk more about those MBA programs. I smiled as I typed my response. My door is always open. No pretense is needed. Setting down my phone, I looked out at my oceanfront home. The home I had purchased after decades of meaningful work. The home that would soon welcome school children to learn about marine conservation. The home that had unexpectedly become the setting for a different kind of education altogether. The house I had bought and allowed others to believe I lived in alone and friendless had become, through an unexpected chain of events, the catalyst for new connections, recalibrated values, and deeper understanding. Not just for my son or the Westfields, but for me as well. Sometimes I reflected, the greatest purpose a possession can serve is to remind us of what truly matters. Not the possession itself, but the authenticity, impact, and relationships it makes possible. I raised my glass to the night sky, offering a silent toast to unexpected lessons and new beginnings. The credits had rolled on our televised story, but the real narrative of growth, purpose, and authentic connection was just beginning its most interesting chapter. Thank you very much for listening. Please leave a comment with a rating from 0 to 10. Subscribe to the channel and share this story with a friend.